Hi!
Hey everybody, how are you?
Jane Kimberly here again for our video this week.
Yeah.
Last week we kind of talked about some of the issues I was having in our marriage, and Jay's now going to talk about some of the issues that he was having. And yes, we are being very transparent here, and we just feel called to do this. Our hearts are for a lot of marriages out there. And we struggle just like everybody else does. Marriage is hard. It's not easy, but love is a choice. It's not a feeling. So many people think it's a feeling, and all the stuff we watch on TV is all about the butterflies and this and that.
Well, and it's about I don't feel it anymore. Therefore, it must not be right. And I think that's a big thing that a lot of us go through. And there's seasons of our marriage that we go through where, sometimes I love her, sometimes I like her, sometimes I don't like her too much.
Hate each other.
And I mean, yeah, we have moments of arguments and fights where we definitely feel that way. And for, some short period of time after that, there's anger and upset. And, a lot of things that came up in our marriage was things that for me were normal. And this is going to be a difficult thing for me to talk about because I've never talked about it before. But I think it had a true adverse effect on how our marriage went. And some of the paths that Kimberly took, I'm not saying that what I did was actually causing her to do those things, but it certainly didn't help her to feel comfortable at home, comfortable where she felt the love that she should have felt, the love that I should have been giving her, and the intimacy that I should have been having for her, sexually. And so what it's about, obviously, is it's about two things. It's about how men have a tendency to take care of themselves sexually, and not only that, how they pursue things to make it easier for it, which is pornography. When I was young, I started, all this when I was probably 12 or 13 years old, and it became a habit pretty quick, and really something that almost became daily when I was going through high school and even in the little bit of college that I went to, and even when I had girlfriends or didn't have girlfriends, it really didn't make much difference. Pornography really wasn't a big part of it in the beginning.
Back then,
but it was, yeah, but it was stuff like, okay guys, the older guys like me, Sears catalog bra section, that it became a Playboy. Playboy is something that came out later, but because I was a little Christian, back in those days, I really didn't have it around much because it was embarrassing. I didn't want to have people see that I was looking at Playboy. When my friends did it, I would, kind of peek, but it was kind of like, well, no, not me. I don't need that stuff. And so that's kind of how it started. And then as time went on, even as an adult, even when I was previously married, I was, doing the same thing, taking care of myself. Pornography still wasn't involved then, but it was mental fantasy, thinking about other women and even past women that I knew, and that kind of thing to take care of myself. And it was just all it was fantasy. And I know that it had to affect my previous wife, and Kimberly, is it was discovered by her that was things that I did. It really made her feel inadequate. And the funny thing is, I'm so right and smart that I actually argued with her about it, that it's normal, this is what men do, it's not a big deal. And when we met, of course, I wasn't walking with God. And so as a result of that, we had arguments to the point where we went to counseling, and we went to a counselor where the counselor said, oh yeah, businessmen do that. They kind of take care of the stress, to get the stress out, and justified everything that I was doing except for the pornography, because that really wasn't the issue for her at that time. It was just the fact that we would have sex, and then later on I would take care of myself again. And it was just, I don't know if it was a sexual addiction, but it was something that it just wasn't ever enough. And so later on, as time went on in our relationship, I did, things like a laptop came out and DVDs became real accessible. And I didn't do it very often, but it was still wrong. I was still getting them, renting them, once a month or once every couple of months, and keeping them for a few days and then getting rid of them, and then having my own mindset and fantasy about what I'd seen on that. Of course, so it was in my brain and it was in my mind. And so it was something that had to be taken away from my relationship with Kimberly, even though we were having sex regularly. Sex wasn't a problem.
We had a good sex life. That wasn't the problem. It was just I felt totally inadequate and not enough. I was like, how can I even compete, right?
Yeah, and for me, it's kind of like, well, it's just and I didn't think of it this way because I didn't, but it was just me trying to come across with, well, yeah, but honey, it doesn't have anything to do with you. It's me. It's my problem. But the thing was, is that I couldn't hear her, and I wasn't listening to her when she's telling me about her feeling inadequate and where she came from. Well, you talk about that a little bit, because where you came from, how you felt that way because of what you'd seen.
Right, right. And a lot of it, a lot of pornography is just fantasy. I mean, it's not even real life. I mean,
Right.
all those women are doctored up, and they make them look like they don't have a flaw at all. And you're just like going, wait a second. I just had 2 kids. Sorry about that.
Call came in on the
call.
phone, yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it did affect me, definitely. I felt like I just wasn't enough, and I could never satisfy him.
Yeah, well, and not only that, for her, she also told me that it didn't satisfy her in a way where she, not just inadequate, but it fed to those insecurities that she had from all the men that she'd gone out with when they were married men before she met me, and watching that, it's just more of the same to her, and I'm just like everybody else and can't be trusted, which it just emphasized that I can't be trusted.
Right, and then there was the little lies here and there
About that,
and then I
keeping it a
always thought
secret.
that, well, he must be cheating then, things like that, and I always felt like it was kind of cheating. And then after we had our daughter too, I was like, man, these are young girls. It's like your own daughter, it's just.
They weren't that young, so please don't get the wrong
But they
image.
are young.
They
are young on,
yes.
on that stuff, and
Yeah.
it is really
Not kids.
It is really sad, though. Our society and how bad it is, and the moneymaker that it is, and we have to be careful, because there's a lot of temptation out there that pulls us down. We think, oh, one time is okay, and then all of a sudden you get drug into sin so bad.
Right, and I'd been doing it so long, even as a kid, that it was a difficult habit to break. It took a lot of effort, a lot of prayer, a lot of thoughts, a lot of people praying for me. I had a couple of men in a group where we met and talked about it, and I got empowered by that to overcome it. But the thing is that what really got to me was the book I read. I can't remember, gosh darn, I can't think of the name of it, but it said something that finally hit me, even though I knew it was true, was where Jesus said in Matthew 5:28, he said that if you look on a woman and lust after her in your heart, you've committed adultery. Now, maybe Kimberly had done a couple things in our marriage that was adultery, but I was participating in that very same thing in imagery, but no different if Jesus said it was that kind of a sin, that I was committing adultery weekly. And often with other women, even though it wasn't with the woman, the woman doesn't know about it. I'm doing it as secret. Who could it possibly hurt? Well, it's hurting us.
Mm-hmm.
It's hurting our
Hurts
relationship.
Our relationship. Yeah.
It hurts how you feel. Some men get so carried away in this, and I'm fortunate that I didn't get that carried away, where it sears their hearts so greatly that they can't even have sex with their wives. They can't even bear it because their fantasy get so far ingrained in their brain that they can no longer enjoy their wife. And then that, of course, is going to definitely hinder any marriage that's going on in this type of a thing going on. And men, as I've been to men's groups and meetings and large meetings with a lot of men, when this subject comes up, there's a certain percentage of men that raise their hands. And there's going to be also, and it's a great percentage, and even beyond that, are those who aren't willing to raise their hands but are having issues.
Client trying to get a hold of me.
So in this whole issue, it's something that men, I don't care who you are, you can't control it. I have all the same excuses, and let me tell you what some of mine were. They were, it's okay, just this last time, I won't do it again. Kind of like drinking, like the addiction of that. It's okay, God forgives me. He gives me grace to get through this thing. It's okay, because I know if David could do what he did, and he found Bathsheba and did what he did, it's like, I'm a sinner too. I'm just like him. I'm forgiven for all this stuff. And it's true, you are. But there's a certain point where you can stop requiring the relationship you have with Jesus so that you can keep your sin. And that happens with everybody. There's a certain point where your sin goes so far, it takes you away from the one that you love, from the heart that you have for God, where you no longer feel guilt at all. And these things can be carried on a path that takes you right to hell. And I don't want to talk about hell and damnation because that's not who I am, but I want to talk about the fact that you can get lost in this stuff.
Right.
It's an addiction, just like any other addiction.
And it kind of sears your consciousness too, like what you're aware of. And that's kind of like our society. our conscience has been so seared by what's going on and what's approved these days and what's normal, and it's, you know, we don't want to judge anybody, but we have guidelines.
I have no right. I have no right to judge anybody.
Right.
It's like I'm not Paul, but I've had some pretty good sins in my life that I've held on to and cherished for a very long time.
Right.
And beyond that, there's David, when he talked about in Psalm 19 about the presumptuous sin, in verse 15, 16, and 17, he says, Lord, please keep me from presumptuous sins. A presumptuous sin is a sin that you're going to assume that God's going to forgive you for, even though you continue to do it. And I don't know if that's the exact meaning of it, but that's what I get out of it in those verses. Not being a Bible theologian, please, if there's anybody out there who says I got it wrong, just understand the point is that I just want men to realize that anytime you're continuing a sin and you think that it's going to be okay because God forgives you for it, that is not what God wants you to do. He wants you to go to Him, get strength, get power, talk to other men. There are
tons of groups,
thousands and thousands
support
of men
groups,
out there
things like
that
that,
have this problem, that have stood up and stood for it and bounced back and said, I can beat this thing. And it is a battle. It's just, and that's what the name of the book was. It said the battle. It's called Every Man's Battle.
Every Man's
And it's
Battle,
a great
yeah.
book. And that's the book I read that said, you are committing adultery when you are doing this thing, because you are looking on a woman, you're lusting after her, and you're proceeding to take whatever action you're taking that goes against the morals and not the morals of God and what He really wants in your life. But He does forgive you. He does help you to overcome it. And that's really it. And it became a real issue for Kimberly. I kept it like, it doesn't bother me, but it bothered her. Now, how much do I love her that I allow that to go on in my life? How am I the spiritual leader when I allow that to go in my life? How do I lead my family to Christ and to God, and to have the true Spirit of God in me if I'm constantly pushing the Spirit of God away from me by this sin that stays so deep in my heart?
Right.
It's something that needs to be dealt with. So, and women, you also have issues too. There are some women that have a problem with this, and for those that have it, it's hard. I think it's harder for women to discuss this because it's something that's just not done by women. But there are a smaller percentage, but it still happens. And we just want you to know that there is help out there, that you can go do something about it. And there's a lot of love out there with people who have already been through this, and they know how to get through it because God showed them how. And there's great books out there for it. There's great groups out there for it. And if there's any information that you need that I have or that we can give you to
Adam
help you on
just
a path.
posted too that he has a support group at our church. Yeah. Yes. Amen.
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
we need help for both. Absolutely.
Right.
Because I'm visual too. So yeah, absolutely. Okay, guys. Well, that's it for this week, and we'll tune in next week. We love you, and have a blessed week. We had fun at the Open yesterday, so thank you for allowing us to have the day off, and now we're back on today.
Right.
So take care.
I know.